Alright, well today's all about views. So here comes our views. So open up the subviews number 1, the PDF file, and now we're going to create a brand new Xcode application, and we're going to call it subview test or subview 1. We're going to make 2 of these, so you can go subview 1, subview 2 if you want. So hopefully you remember how to find Xcode on your computer. I know it's been a week. Take 1 week off and we forget about everything. Create a new project, and it's going to be a single view application. Click on next, and I'm going to call this one a subview 1. Subview 1. And I'm going to make it for the iPhone. I believe the assignment number 5 says iPhone. Don't take that to grain. I mean, take that with a grain of salt. You can. That means flexibility. You can do it for iPad if you want, or whatever you want. You don't have to do it for iPhone. An iOS application is what that should have said. Go ahead and save it. And go ahead and look at the storyboard. And then we see that we have this container object. I'm going over the terminology that was in that assignment, by the way, to give you a frame of reference for it. This is what they call the container. It's a window. And it's actually a view controller. We could do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. But I'm going to show you something here. You could do this. Drag another view controller out here. So now you have 2 containers. And then put a button. This is my scratch. I'm going to take it away. I'm going to build the tutorial in a few minutes. So you can watch or you can play around and do this. But let me show you a little trick here. So if I put a button out here, and I call this one go to 2. And I put a button over here, it says go to 1. Go to 1. And I make this background green. Oops, I meant, well, now I have to change this again. Hold on. Put this back on the black. Change the background of the window to green. Then change this one to, I don't know, another color. I'm just changing the color so that I can tell which window is showing. Change this one to, I'll go like a, well, that's a kind of an interesting color. And if I take the buttons here and I control drag it to the view, now I'm not doing it to the view controller, I'm doing it to the multiple view controllers. Let go. And I can do a push, a modal, or a custom. If I do the modal, what it does is it switches, and I get this little line that shows up. In fact, let me get rid of the side piece so I can maximize the appearance of this. So I get this button here go into 2, and then I click over here, for example, and I press down the control button, and I come back, and I do it to this view controller, and I select modal. Now, it's kind of a funny looking line, but now you see I have 2 of these little lines, right? So watch this. If I run the project, this is one view controller to another view controller. I didn't put a label, I just changed the background. So if I can go 2, 1, 2, 1. I'm switching views that are located in 2 separate view controllers. Get it?
So if we need to add different pages for app.
I'm going to show you in a minute. I'm demonstrating multiple things to you, then we're going to do the tutorial. Because I want you to get the big picture, what we're doing here. You don't have to do this, by the way. I'm just showing it to you. I'm recording this as well, so you can watch this over and over again and do it as many times as you want. But let's just shut this for a second here. So this button here, I control dragged it to the view controller.
Is it a button or a label?
I think I put a button on there. It's a button, yeah. It's a button controller. Actually, good question. Would it work with a label? I don't think it would work with a label.
It won't.
Yeah, usually you would put a button on there. So you can put like it up here or something like that if you wanted to. So if you click on let's put the properties back over here. If you click on the little box here for the button, you can see up here the property that's associated with it. This is called a storyboard segue. Segue. I think it's called a segue. If I'm pronouncing that correctly, don't quote me on that. Segue? Segue. Where you're going from one view to another. You've created an artificial segue or storyboard segue. So this is the storyboard. So what you could do, let me show you this. I just put 2 of them up here. Let me just do another one. I want to be creative here. Let me make some room here. And I'm going to put another guy up here. View controller number 3. Oh, there we go. So I put a 3rd one on here. And so now I can put another button here. I'm going to put a button, oops, if I spell this correctly. I'm going to put a button on the, right under here. And it says, on here I'm going to say, open 3rd. Open 3rd. Here's the 3rd one. And let me change this so I could get the right color here. Oops. Tint color. We don't want that tint color on there. There we go. Open 3rd. And then this one's going to be called 3rd. So I'm going to change the background color, make this one blue. That looks pretty good. And then over here I'm also going to put a button. And this one's going to say open 3rd. And so I'm going to segue, oops, that's not what I wanted. I'm going to segue both of those 2 buttons to this one. So I'm going to click on it to select it, press down the control button, drag it over here, create modal. Modal is just to go from, you're inside of the view controller and you're really just switching the view. It's a modality. It changes one view to the other view. And then this one here, I'm going to also control drag it to here, do a modal on it. So I've got now these 2 that are going to this one. And on this one, I'm going to put a couple buttons on here. I'm going to say go 1, go 2. Sounds pretty good. This one's going to say go to 1. I like the go to terminology because it's really like go to in programming from the old days. Go to 2. This is really 3. So my buttons here, I kind of have to change the tint color. Let's just go to white. To white. Because it's such a dark color. I'm going to make this as bright as possible. So now if I run it, I'm going to get, I can go to the 3rd one and then go back to 1 or 2. So going along the lines of a storyboard that was really designed so that you can create navigation. So if I say open 3rd, and I can say, let's just go to 1 or go to 2. Oops, it's broken. I don't know why. Probably because I didn't go back. I didn't connect them. So let me go back and connect it actually. I put it in here, but I don't know if I did the connection. Yeah, so control drag it this way. This is 1. I don't know which one this is. I'm just playing around with it. This one here, let's just call this one 2. So now it should work actually. And I'm going to show you another trick in a minute here. So you'll see some other options. So go to the 3rd one, go to the 2nd one, go to the 1st one, go to the 2nd one, go to the 3rd one, go to the 1st one. No, it's whatever you have this going to. Ah! When you load it, view controller number 1 shows up first as the main. So this one's going to show up. You don't want this to show up first? Change the app delegate and load one of the other ones instead. We did this in a tutorial before a few weeks ago. So let me show you another little trick. If you like this approach, there's another little trick you can do here is change these behaviors. So where it says the transition, and here is the default. Well, let's do a flip. Flip horizontal. And I'm going to click on this one and go flip vertical. Let's see, cover vertical. I'll do that one. And then I've got to find the other 2 that are here. Let's try a partial curl. And on this one here, let's do cross dissolve. Ooh. So let's see, I'm going to run it again. And you'll see that the transitions are now all like different. So if I do this one, see how it flips? Nice flip. Huh? And then this one does a kind of a, well now, unfortunately the flip is kind of messed up because it's flipped. So anyway, long story short, you get what I'm talking about, I hope. You can change around the behaviors and stuff. So those are different views that are separated out with different view controllers. However, I didn't create the view controllers. I just created, I created the view controller, but I didn't create the .h and the .m files that go along with it. You could add a set of view controller files for view 1, view 2, view 3, and have them controlled by the separate view controllers, and then drag and drop and do everything we did in the first part of the course. You can do that but times 3. I put them all in one app. You could take your tic-tac-toe game, your alarm clock, and everything else, and stick them all inside of one app if you wanted to. And you just have buttons and go to each one of the different apps. So you can have 20 apps in one app. So why do you want that? I don't know. You probably don't want that. So I'm actually going to stop that one here and throw it away, because what I want to do is this tutorial to show you a slightly different technique. So what I'm going to do in this one, I'm going to come back here and type in subview 1 again. Now I have a fresh app. Now I'm going to stick the views all inside of one view controller and then control it through one view controller. So this one will be interesting. So let's go ahead and take a look at the instructions again. So let's see. We're going to create 2 new UI view classes. And we're going to do that by selecting the File, New File from the menu. And we're going to choose Objective-C classes. So Objective-C class template, make sure we subclass the UI view. And then we're going to name these classes View 1 and View 2. So here's our little screenshot of what it is we're going to do. So go ahead and let's just do that. So we created our blanket project. Let's create 2 UI views. So we're going to go File, New, File. And make sure you're on iOS, Cocoa Touch. And we are going to do Objective-C class. So select Objective-C class, the first item. Click on Next. Down where it says subclass of, switch that sucker to UI view. And then we're going to do this twice. So this is going to be called View 1.
This is a new one.
We're doing the project now.
And what is the previous one? The one
It was just something I was showing you.
I did that.
Oh, but just throw it away and start a brand new project. Or save it and start a brand new project and call it something else. So this one's called View 1. And in our screenshot, we see that these are not enabled, and they're not enabled actually here, the targeted for iPad and well, I don't have an iPad application, so I'm not going to get that option. But I'm not going to include an XIB because I'm going to put it all inside of the same view. But I can't do it anyway because I'm inheriting a subclass from UI view. If I did UI view controller, I'd be doing what I did in the last when I was playing around, and I'd be actually creating a new controller for this if I wanted to. So hopefully you got the hint there in terms of toolbar.
As in like,
You mean that down here in the library? You can, but watch what we're going to do, and you'll see what I'm doing. You'll see something different.
but you can do it using
No, you're going to subview a view from a view. From the GUI perspective, you're not going to do the code for it. You're not going to get a new subclass. If you drag it here, if you take a view here and throw it like we've done before, we're doing something slightly different. And you're going to see the difference in a few minutes. So hold that thought, hold that question. Go ahead and press Next and save it. Do this twice. So we have view1.h and view1.m. And we're going to have another one here because we need 2 of these. So File, New File. I'm doing this again if you missed it. In the iOS Cocoa Touch category, click on Objective-C class, hit on Next. You want a subclass UI view, And I'm doing my second one, so I'm going to call this one view 2. Next, create. Now I have two sets, view1.h, view1.m, view2.h, view2.m. Ringing any bells? I know it's been a week. Looking at all familiar? So let's see. Next, we're going to again create a file, new file, but this time we're going to create a protocol. So we're going to add a protocol, and the template that we're going to create the new protocol is going to be named viewDelegate. So we're going to create another protocol. We remember protocols and categories. We did this before we took that 1 week off that feels like a century. Feels like a century ago. It is really just one class meeting last week that we missed. Anyway, but maybe this will start coming back soon. Who knows? We're going to call this one viewDelegate. So go ahead and go back to Xcode. File, new, file. Over here on the right-hand side, it says Objective-C Protocol. Select that one. Click on Next. And this one is going to be called viewDelegate. So you can call it anything you want. I'm going to call it viewDelegate. Delegate, however you say that. Press Next. Press Create. So now I have the viewDelegate right here. And it's a .h file, by the way. So let's see what we're going to do. Because we have the app delegate that controls which view controller shows up first. By default, we get the default view controller that we did with a single view application. What we're doing is we're creating 2 additional views and a protocol called the viewDelegate that's going to pretend like to be another app delegate. It's our custom delegate that's going to control which view is visible when we want it to be visible. So, and before long you'll get the big picture if you haven't gotten it yet. So, open up the viewDelegate.h and then add the 2 following prototypes. So we're going to have a view 1 button pressed and a view 2 button pressed. So I'm going to copy and paste this. And I'm going to stick it in the .h file. And it's this one here. So inside of the protocol, between the app protocol and the at end, I'm going to add in my 2 methods. So go ahead and do that if you're following along. Now we're going to open up view 1 and view 2. We don't actually have to use this delegate, this protocol. We can get away without using the protocol. I'm just showing you a good practice. So just so you know, you don't actually have to implement the protocol. It's just the pattern. It's a design pattern. All right, so we're going to open up, but go ahead and follow along because otherwise the rest of the tutorial is not going to work without the protocol. So now we are going to open up view 1 and view 2.h and we're going to add the header file to use the viewDelegate.h. So it's this line here we need to put at the top. So I'm going to copy this one. I'm going to put it at the top of both of those 2. So I'm going to go back into here. I'm clicking on view 1. And right here at the top on the import, I'm importing the viewDelegate.h because we're going to implement the protocol in here. And then I'm going to click on view 2 and I'm also going to add the header file up here at the top. So I have viewDelegate.h added to that one as well. We're importing it, we're adding it to the top so we can use the methods that we put in there. Alright, now we're going to add the 2 properties to the file. So at property UI button, and we're going to have an ID of viewDelegate. So both views will have a delegate object and will respond to a message in viewDelegate.h. And both files are going to have the same code added to them. So we're going to take and copy this one as well and put it inside of the view controller, the .h file for both views. So go back here, and you're wondering, why in the world are we going to copy and paste this in here instead of dragging and dropping and creating it? Because they're the same. So I want to make sure that we connect them the same. So go ahead and just manually put the properties, and then we'll go backwards. We'll connect it to the GUI in a few minutes. And you'll see how that works. So we've got the first property added. If you left out the import, this is going to give you an error. The ID is a generic object type. So we created a delegate object. The delegate's got those two methods in it. And we have a button property. So go ahead, that was my view2.h, so I'm going back to view1.h. I did them in reverse order, doesn't really matter. Paste this in here as well. There's also a finished project that you can open up and look at if you're having problems doing this. So let's see. We have the UI button. Excuse me?
I got NS object instead of UI.
Because you inherited from the wrong object. You got, if you went into here, File, New, File, and in your Objective-C class, if you left this one here on the default, then you have the wrong object. I would just change the object and inherit from UI view.
Just type it.
Take away NS object and replace it with UI view. You're just changing the inheritance. So this is inheritance. So instead of inheriting from NS object, inherit from UI view, and you're in good shape. Everybody up to speed so far? Okay, good. Yeah. And the import, are you importing view delegate and you're in the .h file? Hold on one second, let me come over there and take a look. You do have to have all files located in the same subdirectory if you're going to use this technique. If you're having problems like one guy in the back, one of them was working for one and wasn't working for the other, make sure there's no cut and paste errors with special characters or something that maybe have accidentally inserted. And make sure you have a line return at the end of that line. That might also be a problem if you didn't put a hard return in. So after cutting and pasting. Alright, so let's move forward. So both views now have the two methods in here. So now we're going to edit the .m's and we're going to synthesize the button and the delegate. So this is on 2 lines. Actually, yeah, I'll just cut and paste it. I was going to say you could put this on 1 line if you wanted to, but let's go ahead and do that. So now I'm clicking on the view 1.m, and right after the @implementation, I am going to paste in the synthesize. Mine seems to have worked. And then I'm going to click on viewController.m and paste in. See, mine always works, even though everybody else's doesn't work. So paste that in there. It's kind of ironic. I don't know why it works out that way. Mine always works. So that's because I was meant to do this. I don't know. All right, so now you see that, and you'll be wondering, you know, what is this other stuff in this here? Well, we inherited from UI view, so naturally we have this initWithFrame, rectangle frame, and we have all these other, you know, this is calling super initWithFrame. It's the initializer to create the frame, which is the window. Now we're going to take the window and we're going to stick it inside of the view controller. So we already have the window concept, huh?
I did not get all that.
If you don't have this stuff in here, it means up here, when you created this with NS object, you didn't get it. I would just delete the two, recreate them when inherit from UI view, and you're going to get the, yeah, unfortunately, I forgot about that part. It's not going to initialize correctly if you didn't create it by the right template. So if you inherit from UI view, you're going to get the right inits for it. It might actually work without it because we're not going to use that.
Okay.
But we'll see what happens. If you have the time right now, you can probably just easily delete these and recreate them with the correct inheritance and then paste the stuff in, but that's totally up to you. Alright, so in View Controller 1, actually, don't do anything. You can paste the whole thing from here. So don't worry about that. If you didn't get it, if you don't have the initializer, don't worry about it. It's repeated right here. Did you do the same thing? Oh. Don't worry about it. Forget everything I just said a few seconds ago. Let's just move forward. If you don't have the init, don't worry about it. In View Controller 1, remove the existing init with frame. If you don't have one, you have nothing to remove, so don't worry about it. and place in these two methods. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to create a new, we're going to initialize a new frame. In it we're going to call super, same thing as we did before. But now we're going to go self.button. We're going to create the button. The button with a type UI button, type round rectangular. It'll be interesting because that's an older button type. So it'll be interesting to see what we actually get. And the button's going to be 50 by 50, 100 by 35. So it's X, Y, Z, or 0, 1. It's the 4 quadrants of a square, of a rectangle. So that's how big the button's going to be. And then in the frame, the self.button.frame is going to be equal to the button frame. And then we're going to set a title, and we're going to call it 1, because this is going to be view number 1. We'll run it in a few minutes, and you'll see what this looks like. Then we're going to add a target. We're going to add a selector, button touched. We are doing this programmatically. It's the same thing as wiring it, like what we've done so far with the wiring to the view controller, but instead we're doing it in the view itself without using the controller. So we're going to add the button touched, and then for the controller UI event touch up inside. We could have used touch down, but we're going to use touch up inside. Touch down, touch under. This is the same thing you get programmatically, or excuse me, with the GUI. And then we're going to add the subview to the view. So we're going to add we're going to add the button to the subview. And then for the button touched event, it's going to set the delegate. So self.delegate, it's going to run the view 1 button pressed. And that's the prototype that we put in there. So go ahead and copy and paste this code, both methods, and stick it inside of view1.m is where we're going to stick this. So go back to the project. View1.m, I'm going to remove what's here. So I have my at implementation, I have my at end. Did I put this back? I did. Okay, good. And then I have my 2 synthesized components, and I'm going to paste this in, and everything pasted in just fine. So now I have the code that we just looked at a few minutes ago. And lo and behold, I'm probably going to end up doing the same to the other one. So let's go take a look here. So we overrid the view 1's initWithFrame in order to dynamically create a button and put the button on the view, which is what we did. And then we set the button to 1 as the label. And then we added an action, which is going to be a touch up inside action, or touch up inside. And then we put the method in for the action. And all it's doing is calling the delegate method that we created. So on view 2, we're doing the same thing. It's just going to call the other. It's going to call view 2 method instead of view 1 method. So go ahead and cut and paste the view 2.m code. Very similar. And let's put that one into the view 2.m file. Same thing as we did before. So I'm going to remove the entire contents except for the 2 synthesized. And I'm going to paste in the view 2. So now I have the same pretty much going on with view 1 and view 2. Now we have the 2 views and they're all ready to go. We have to connect it to the main view controller. Because remember, we still have view controller out there that controls the view. So now if we run the project, we're just going to get that blank view controller that shows up. So open up viewcontroller.h and we're going to edit it. So we're going to add the 2 imported view 1 and view 2s. So the .h files. So open up viewcontroller.h. At the top, add the 2 imports. They seem to have word wrapped for me, so I'm going to put a line return at the end of them. So viewcontroller.h has view1.h and view2.h, because we're going to use that inside the view controller. Now we're going to change the @interface viewcontroller :UI viewcontroller to @interface viewcontroller UI viewcontroller, and then we're going to add the protocol. So we can actually just take this line here, copy it, oops, and let me show you what this looks like over here. So this is the line we're changing here, the at interface. I'm going to put it underneath so you can see what the difference is. All we're doing is adding the view delegate to the end of it. So if you don't want to copy and paste it, just come up here and add the view delegate. And I'm a terrible typer, so I'm just going to go here. We made use of the protocol. We don't have to include the protocol because we've already included it inside of view 1 and view 2.h. If you remember that part. So we don't have to include it again. If you want to, you could actually. It would work. No problem. So basically we're telling the view controller to use the protocol. Now we're going to add 2 new properties, one for each one of the views, because the main view controller is going to load in view 1 or load in view 2. So go ahead and copy and paste these 2 brand new properties and put it in viewcontroller.h. Trust me, by the end you'll go, oh, this is really cool. There's a lot of little steps to this, a lot more than what I showed you in the first 2 seconds of this video when we looked at the segues between one and the other. But you'll see you have more control this way. But let's just continue. We have view 1 and we have view 2. We have 2 properties created now. We're in the main view controller. Now the view controller adopts the view delegate protocol that we created before setting up the 2 properties. So now we're going to put those 2 in. We've got the view controller that's adopting it. So now in the viewcontroller.m file, we're going to synthesize the 2 new views. So synthesize line. So let's see. In viewcontroller.m, between the at interface at implementation and the at end, I'm going to go ahead and paste in here the synthesize for view 1 and view 2, just like we do with any other synthesize property synthesize. Created the set. Now we're going to add the methods to implement the protocol method that's required by using that protocol and provide the needed functionality that we're going to want. So we're going to do an NS log. For lack of more creativity, we're just going to put some messages to the log. It's going to be button 1 touched, button 2 touched, because each one of the views has a button on it. And when we touch the button, it's going to trigger a touch up inside event that's going to say view 1 button pressed, view 2 button pressed. So we've separated the logic out. If you've been following along, the views have the buttons, has the event's calling the methods are in the protocol. So you can create a generic environment, just swap out the protocol, and you have brand new methods. Or not really, I shouldn't say that. Swap out the view controller with different implementations for the methods that are in the protocol, and everybody follows the same protocol. Then you can essentially have the same kind of generic method that would be called. So the use of the protocol is to enforce some rules. So all view controllers that have these views, if they were adapting the same protocol, they would all have the same methods. You just call the method. And however you want to implement the method is however you want to implement it. So if you're creating a card game, for example, and you had a front and a back of the card, you can have cards playing several different games. Reuse the same functionality of the card by using the protocol and never have to worry about writing that code over and over again. So it's a design pattern, the use of that protocol. So we're going to copy and paste these. We're still back in viewcontroller.m. Copy and paste the 2 method implementations and stick them in viewcontroller.m. So I'm back here. I'm going to put it right above the view did load, and I'm going to paste them in. So now I have view 1 button pressed and view 2 button pressed. It's just going to put an NS log out there for me. Okay, so now on my view did load, I'm going to change that around a little bit. So I'm going to add 2 lines to the view did load because I want to set the view 1.delegate to self and the view 2.delegate to self. This is what we would normally do with an app delegate to set the delegates to the correct view controller. So we're going to do it in this view controller because the app delegates set our view controller, and now we're going to set the delegate for view 1 and view 2 to the view controller. So if you didn't follow that, don't worry about it for right now. You'll get it later. Copy and paste. Excuse me?
Where did you paste it? The top?
This goes into viewController.m right after the synthesize. So we're also going to stick this into viewController.m, but this is going to be loaded inside of the viewDidLoad method. So I'm going to copy this and stick this inside the viewDidLoad, which is strategically placed right underneath the two methods I just added. So paste it in here. So now I have the view 1 and the view 2 delegates set to self, and self is the view controller. So now we're going to add 2 lines to the didReceiveMemoryWarning method. Why? Because we're creating garbage. And if we get a memory warning after we've created too much garbage, we want to get rid of the garbage. This was before we had automatic reference counting and before we had control over this. However, it's still not a bad practice. In fact, the didReceiveMemoryWarning may not be in here anymore. Nope, it is. They left it on the bottom. That's good. There's talk about it going away because you don't necessarily need to do any memory management anymore. However, your app will run faster if you do this. So if your app is running low on memory because it's been creating these objects and creating these objects over and over again and using these objects, what this does is just sets it to nil. When it sets it to nil, it gets garbage collected. So if we get a memory warning that says, hey, we're running out of memory, take and set view 1 and view 2 to nil. Make it garbage collectible. So if we have any instances of them out there, they'll get garbage collected. It basically makes our app run nicely, or nice, along with everything else. So optionally, go ahead and add this to the didReceiveMemoryWarning. Your app will run just fine without it, but you're just not playing nice. You're just consuming a lot of memory. You're never getting rid of any of the memory if you don't check it. So. Alright, so let's see where we're at then. Put this at the end of the method. So put this at the inside of the didReceiveMemoryWarning. So add the entire method here. This method here is kind of interesting. So I'm going to go through the notes at the bottom and then we'll cut and paste and see what it does. This is the older way of adding an XIB. XIB stands for Xcode Interface Builder. It used to have this thing called a nib. And so some of the older projects actually have .nib files and XIB files, and now the current ones have storyboard files. All the concepts are still there. What we're doing is we're manually creating this because we didn't create a view controller. We're using the existing view controller, and we have all these little pieces we're going to stick inside of it. This is how we're going to get it inside. So in the view controller, initWithNibName, it's going to initialize the view controller with the nibName, and luckily for you, it's view 1 and view 2. So how's it going to do that? It's going to set the super initWithNib to a nibNameOrNil. So we're going to initialize it, then we're going to swap it out. So if the rectangle that we create is supposed to be for view 1, then we're going to do a self.view1 is equal to view1 allocate a new one, and then initialize it into the view 1 frame, or set the background color to red, and then add it as a subview to the view. We already have the view that's out there. And then do it again for view 2. So we'll have view 1 and view 2 loaded together in the same frame, or in the same window, I should say, or same view, I should say. So we have the 2 subviews loaded into the same view. So what does this change accomplish? Defines the 2 methods, delegate methods. Log out the fact that the buttons are pressed, because we could, I guess, change a label or something, but it's just going to basically respond when we press the buttons. Override the nib, and this is the part we just looked at a few seconds ago. Creates 2 subviews and gives them properties for each one of the subviews in the view controller's view, and then sets the view controller as the delegate for view 1 and view 2. So we put this in here. We're almost done with this app. So take the entire method, because the method doesn't exist yet. And we're sticking this method in the viewController.m file with the rest of the code we just added in. I'm just going to stick it at the bottom here. So I have my method in here on the viewController.m. Let's just see if there's anything else we need to do. I believe we should be done. Run your app. The views will display in the properties in the proper colors with their respective buttons by touching the buttons. They're not going to see anything, but you'll be able to see the log statement. Add in an NSLog statement to the button touched method implemented in view1.m. Leave the rest of the code there. I think we already put this in actually. Do the same for viewController.2. We're supposed to get something that looks like this. This is an older screenshot from the older project. But let's just take a look and see what we actually have for this project. Crash, bang, no. Error message, no, not really. This is build successful. It'll be interesting because these are old round rectangular buttons that didn't work. Interesting. Let's take a look here. You're right.
This method is not being called.
initWithNib, it's not going to be called, is it? It might be due to the project type.
Yeah.
I'm going to degradate the project type. So let me just try something else real quick though. The sample project that was created with the older project type, I just want to make sure that this one's running and that it's not something with my Xcode settings or anything. And this one is a, let's just see, this is an iOS 7. This is a subview test. This one is working, which is interesting. And the buttons down here are working. And this is set for iOS 7. So let's just take a look here. This is 7.1. So I'm going to close this one for a second. Take a look to see if there's any. Oh, no, don't upgrade. Skip it. This is the Retina 4 screen. Okay. So let me go back then to the one that's not working. And it's also 7.1, but it's set for a 3 point. So I'm going to put it back on the Retina 4. Is it 64-bit, the other one? I can't remember what the other one was set to. I'm going to change it to make sure the project types are the same first. Because it does depend on the coordinates of the screen, actually. So let's see what happens with this one. Okay, still no dice. Let's just take a look then. Let's just look at this for a second. 7.1 iPhone, portrait, landscape. Okay, hold on a second. This is looking different. The screen looks different. So this is the full screen. 4-inch 64-bit. So it's a 7.1. Deployment target 6.1. Deployment environment. Let's try this. I know that the buttons are, this one says 7, so I'm going to change this one to 6.1. I know that those UI rectangular buttons are depreciated. They're not in the current one. So let's see if this has any effect on it. I'm sorry? I'm going to see if it works first, then I'll tell you what to do. What to change on it. Nope, that didn't work. Let's see.
It is not being called initWithNibName.
Did we mess up the code? You know, that is the problem. It is, but it could have been called and it could be failing. It could still be called. But let's just see if I left something out, actually.
If you put a debug pointer, then it is not being called.
Okay, so if it's not being called, it means it's either not part of the current API, and we need to, which is what I'm doing with the APIs. It should be called automatically, so let's just take a look. I just want to make sure that my code part of it is correct, which I believe it is, actually. This is just to put comments in. Okay, so we followed the tutorial correctly. Let me play around then, back up here. T. Build settings, 6.1 target. So the difference is the other one is an older project type. That's one of the main differences. 6.0. Target iPhone. So let me switch the target around. I'm going to switch the target back if I can. This is the one that works actually. So I'm going to go back to this one. Go back down to 6. Add to the scheme. 4. Let's just try one more thing. If you have an older Xcode version, it's probably working fine. And if you bring up the original project, it will work as well. So let's see. The original project is actually in the EMS. I located it. If you find it, it's called subview test. So trying to figure out how to backgrade this down. So let me pause this for a second. The reason why the project isn't working with the storyboard is because you have to create it with the XIB. So in the project solution that works, there's an viewcontroller.xib. The nib initNib isn't going to work on a storyboard. So what the makers of Xcode did is it took away the ability to actually create the XIB automatically. Instead, you automatically get a storyboard. If you have an older version of Xcode and you can create the XIB option instead of the storyboard, then you're in great shape. This project will work just fine. If not, what we have to do is we have to actually go in here and say File, New, File, and we have to actually add an XIB. So if you go into the user interface, we can click on, hold on a second, resource, let me find it. Well, the better way of doing it would be just to add another view controller. So we go File, New, File, Cocoa Touch, Objective-C class, next. Call this one View Controller. We can't call it, yeah, actually we can call it View Controller. View Controller. And then change it so it's a UI View Controller. And then add the XIB file. And then go next. And then click on Create. And it's going to tell me that I already have a View Controller, so I'm going to cancel it. And I'm going to change the name to New View Controller. Go next. Create. So now I actually have the XIB here. So then I'd have to take the code from the, I'd have to call the view controller from the app delegate. take the code from the storyboard, stick it in the view controller so that the XIB works. And then it would run perfectly fine like that. So basically, I'm going to close this one and show you the working solution that has an XIB file next to it, because it's faster than going through this tutorial one more time. Excuse me?
Is this assignment 5?
This is something that you can do for assignment 5, yes. But what you can do if you want to, you don't have to do it this way. I'm showing you an example of how to do it. You can do what I did in the first 2 seconds of this video, or in this lecture, where I just put out the segues. And you can just segue the screens. You have to have multiple views. You can put them inside of different view controllers. You can put them inside of one view. So instead of...
The flipping one which
That's the flipping one I'm talking about. You don't have to have flipping behavior.
Not,
You
like
could
you
easily
can
put in flipping behavior.
okay.
When you click on the view, it loads another view.
Okay.
Or how about an image view, as an example? An image view is a view. Any one of the subclasses of view. Web view, image view. Pick a view. Put a view on there. Actually, let me just show you what I'm talking about.
Then what did you show that flip one? No need to use that in.
You don't have to use a flip. Actually, you could put, if you wanted to, you could open up a single view application, throw an image view out there, throw a bunch of images inside of your project, put a little button there that says flip, or wire an event, touchdown event, or I don't know, yeah, touch event on the image view. When it touches the image, flip it. The flip is essentially just showing another image. Or there's actually a flip on the segue. You can use the flip on the segue too. It just takes the view and flips it into another view. That's what the flip means. Yeah. All right, so if we load up the solution file that comes with this tutorial from the older API that actually has the XIB created for you automatically, the behavior we're looking at are the 2 views. The red view and the blue view. And the buttons are going to show you the NS logs that come out of this. So the NS logs are down here. It says that I just clicked on this one, clicked on that one, click on this one, click on that one. So you can see that the events are actually working. It's just basically showing me the status inside of the buttons on the bottom. So the purpose of this was to show you the concept. And the concept is that 2 views that are inside of the same view control, that are being used by the same view controller inside of the same window. The trick to it is you have to use an XIB. You can't use a storyboard, and you can't create a default project with an XIB in the current version of Xcode. You actually have to use the storyboard. The thing that came out after the XIB was the storyboard. The storyboard concept uses the segues I showed you in the beginning. This is the older way of doing it. The segues are the easier way of doing it. Some people still prefer to do it this way. If you're going to do it this way, you can't use a storyboard. You have to use XIB for it. Otherwise, you don't get the same method control.
So now how we make this one work?
You can't.
XIB, after taking XIB.
If you want to make the original one work, let me close this for a second here. I'll show you what I'm talking about. You can, but we're not going to do it. If you want to make this work, you do what I just did a few minutes ago. Add another view controller with an XIB. Put the code from the original storyboard, or excuse me, put the code from view controller 1 over here. Reduplicate everything we did, but put it in here instead. Basically, we'd have to start over again and redo the tutorial to work with the XIB file. And this view controller instead of the one that's linked to the storyboard. And then change the app delegate to load this one instead of the other one. So we have to basically redo the project and move everything over to the XIB. Or, better yet, just open up the solution file. It's in the EMS. And I'll put it underneath this video. Just open up the one and use that one. However, you don't have to use anything at all of either one of these 2. You could simply use the storyboard, add some view controllers, and do the segues, like I showed you in the beginning. Anything that uses a multiple view is perfectly fine. As an example, let me show you a multiple view application. Let me close this stuff up. I'm going to open up Xcode, and I'm just going to create this one. Single view application. It's going to be called multiple views. This is what I call the poor man's multiple view. Or poor girl's multiple view. Open up the storyboard. I'm going to change the background of this because I want to put the views in here. I want to show you what I'm talking about. So the background here is white. I'm going to change this to make it green. I'm going to come down in here to the library and type in view. Well, let's type in UI view. Remember what we did in the other one? We actually created it programmatically, view 1 and view 2. This is the same thing, but we're dragging and dropping. So, hello. Come on in here. Here's another view. I'm going to recreate the app we just created. Programmatically, we just created a program. I'm going to do it manually here using drag and drop. Here's view 1. Here's view 2. These are UI views. This one here is going to be, what was the top one, red or something? Red and blue. We got red. Well, it's kind of reddish. Red, blue, purple-ish. Run. This is the equivalent. The other one was a learning exercise. Didn't necessarily want to do it that way. I could put some buttons in it. I could put some NS logs, and it would have the same functionality we just did. You guys can do that. That's what the assignment is asking you for. So we'll flip. Let's see, what if we flip? Let's see. Flip. Is this view over here? It's in one view controller. I clicked on it. Oops. I'm pressing down the control button. Oops. I'm dragging it to this view. I can have it equal with, I can change some things around in it. I can, let's see, horizontal spacing, vertical spacing. I think, is this vertical? This is vertical spacing. Vertical spacing. I can make them vertically aligned that way. I can't really do a segue unless, well, they're both visible. But here, let me show you something else, though. I could do this. Let me show you something interesting. So, I got my two views. I can open up the view controller. Here's something else you can do if you want to. Let's see. Down here on view control, this is viewcontroller.m. I want to go to viewcontroller.h. I'm going to take this view control, drag it over here, and call this one view 1. I got a property for view 1. I got this one here. I'm going to control it over here and say view 2. Sounds pretty good. And let's go drag a button here. Button 1, button 2. And I am going to take, can't see these guys because they're here. Maybe I should make them so I can see them. Let's see, it changed the color to white. Oops. Hold on one second. Put a white color on there. Change the colors to white. I'm going to put a couple of, let's go ahead and put some touch up inside methods. We'll just do that whole tutorial visually. Touch up inside or touch down. This is a good one. And I'm going to call this a button 1. And then I'm going to take this one and I'm going to go, oops, I want to do the touch. I don't want to do that one. I want to do this one. Touch up inside or touch down. Here we go, touch down. Call this one button 2. So now I have button 1, button 2. I'm going to hide and show the views. So button, let's see. For the .m implementation of these buttons down here, Oh, let me synthesize. At synthesize, I would have got view 1 and view 2. And let's see, what am I going to possibly do here? I can say, for this one is what, button 2, the bottom one here. Button 2 is going to say that view 1 dot hidden is equal to true. And then button, oops, yes, sorry. And then, let's see, because I'm such a terrible typist. Let's just do this. View 2 got hidden. But let's see what happens if it's view button 2, button 1, button 2. So this is, let's just go here. This is 1, 2. So 2 is hiding 1. Well, it's kind of funky. It's kind of odd behavior, but we'll just see what happens. So let's see. Oh, it's gone. But it's gone, so I can't click on it. But remember underneath it, we had a green one. So if I started it again and clicked on the other button, it's kind of odd behavior because there's no way of getting it back. Unless we put another button on. So if I do this one now, this one's gone. So this is the same kind of, except for the other one we put logs. We can do NSLog if we want instead of hiding and showing the views. But this is what's meant by the views, and that's the same thing as we did programmatically, but I just did it by dragging and dropping and sticking stuff over here. Another interesting thing is that we take a look at the view in general. We have this other thing called a image view, as an example. I can take an image view and stick it, let's just stick it on top of both views here. And then we'll stick an image in here. I need an image in order to put an image in there, so let's just do this. What do we feel like today? Frogs? I like frogs. So let's see. Stealing a frog off the internet. Here's a nice little froggy. Alright, so let's save the image. Frog.jpg. Some people fail to see the humor in all of this, but let's see. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Drag a frog in here. Copy him in there. There we go. Come over here. Take this guy here. I might have to put him on top of everything else, actually, because I just moved him. There we go. So you see now he's on top of that one and on top of that one. So then I can come over here. I can say, well, where is this image view? Let's just stick it on top of this one here. I can move the image view around to stick it on top of different views. So I can, you know, control the layering. So I'm going to close the side piece here. If I can find the button to do it with. Where's the button? Oh, anyway. Well, alright, let's just leave that alone for a second. Here, I can close it this way. Let's put the, well, I don't want to put it on top of the button now. Oops. I just messed this whole thing up. Well, there we go. Let's move it down here. And let's put the image in here. This is the frog. There we go. Now when I run it, I have 3 views. So I got view 1, view 2, and view 3. And they still work. But because of the layering, view 2 took away view 1. And I still got, so what I was saying before is if you wanted to, you could put some cards up here. When you click on the image view, it changes the image to something else. Or you click on a button, it changes the view. Flip. Have a little button that says flip on it if you want to, or something. So a lot of the solitaire and the 21 and all the little blackjack games and stuff, They're just image views with card pictures on them. And they flip back and forth. It looks fancy. I mean, sometimes it's the whole view that's flipping with a segue. Sometimes it's just the image. You can actually animate it, make it so it dissolves, or, you know, does a bunch of stuff to it. So the purpose of that assignment that you're going to work on for number 5 is to play around with the concept of views. And these are views. Everything inside the window is a view. So anyway, I'm going to end this tutorial, and when I upload the solution, I'll upload the old one that actually works. Yeah?
Can you put 2 images and just show how to flip it?
Yeah. Let me stop this though, because it doesn't make any sense. So let's just